we explained a number of concepts in the Maamar so far. We explained that Moshe Rabbeinu is called in Raya Mehemna a faithful shepherd, or a shepherd of faith, a shepherd that takes care of the flock, a faithful shepherd, or a shepherd of faith, that the job of Moshe Rabbeinu is to internalize the faith that the Jewish people naturally have to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, but sometimes that faith can be not internalized. It can be something that a Jew will profess, but it won't affect his entire being. Like we discussed about the thief who prays to Hashem at the entrance of the tunnel when he's about to break in, that Hashem should help him in his theft. And the Gemara says, yeah, he has faith, but his faith is not internalized. And we also said that Moshe Rabbeinu, there's an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. Hashem provides every generation with the leadership that generation needs in order to serve Hashem properly based on the specific challenges of each generation. In general, there's one Torah and 613 mitzvahs for the entire Jewish people from the time of the birth of the Jewish people forever. But in every generation, there are different challenges and different emphases have to be made, and you need a shepherd of faith to direct the Jewish people, to help the Jewish people so they won't be like on a boat without a compass, just floating around and drifting around. And I must say, this is just a personal reflection that I was thinking about yesterday. Yesterday was Shabbos, and it's a schlep of a walk to get here for Shabbos. So I daven in shul by the area where I live. And it's already a number of times that I've heard shiurim from different people in that shul. And it's not that the people don't have knowledge or they're not Talmidei Chachamim, but it's just so different when someone is developing their own ideas and giving it over, as opposed to someone who's taking the Rebbe's ideas and giving over the Rebbe's ideas. On the one hand, I guess there's less of a good morning. There's less of a of a person's own what do you call it? Their own creativity, right? When they're giving over something that someone else gave over. But on the other hand, when you give over the Rebbe's, what the Rebbe gave over, it's much more powerful, and it's a derech. I felt that it was interesting what the person said, but it didn't really direct anyone anywhere, you know? And it's very important that people have direction.
How are we defining generation? We say the Rebbe is for this generation.
The Rebbe's for this generation. There's no other Rebbe.
Okay,
there's no replacement to the Rebbe.
Might be a new generation.
Yeah, we had that discussion last week a little bit. So the extension HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in his love for us. He makes sure that in every generation we have the leadership that we need, that should direct us and teach us that which we need to know in order to be able to fulfill our mission in the world. The Torah compares Moshe Rabbeinu to Am Yisrael. It says Moshe v'ha'am. And Rashi, which is not Chasidus, Rashi is Pshat of Torah. Rashi says, when the Torah says that Moshe v'ha'am, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu compares Am Yisrael with Moshe Rabbeinu, Rashi says that the Nasi hu hakol, Nasi hador hu shakul keneged kol hador. That's the lashon of Rashi. That the leader of the generation is weighed in the same measure as the entire Jewish people. Like it says, the Talmud Torah, Shokol Keneged Kol HaMitzvahs, like the mitzvah of learning Torah, is equal to all the rest of the commandments. The leader of the generation is equal to the entire Jewish people. And this mimer shows how is it that the Jewish people are connected to Moshe, and Moshe is connected to the Jewish people. Like we already said in the previous weeks, that Moshe Rabbeinu gets an elevation from the Jewish people, even though the Jewish people are considered to be like the feet compared to the head, where the leader of the generation is the head, who guides the body. But without the feet, he can't go anywhere. So the feet, the Jewish people, we give an elevation to Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu obviously elevates the Jewish people because he himself is elevated. And by having the self-sacrifice to come down to our level and to elevate us, he elevates us. So, just to go on a tangent a little bit, that it says about Adam Arishon that he was an Neshama Klolis. Adam Arishon he was a general soul. Adam Arishon, the first man that Hashem created, contained all the souls that would ever come about in the world. They were already contained within him. So if one questions how is it that the Rebbe is able to influence and have an effect and care about each and every Jewish person, it's because the Rebbe is also a Neshama Kloli. The Rebbe is also a general soul, which means that the souls of all the Jewish people are related and connected to that soul. So therefore there's a connection, and therefore the Rebbe has the ability to influence each and every Jewish person if that person wants to be connected, right? There are two ways that the Maamar says now. Let's in chapter 4. We ended chapter 3 with a question, right? That it seems to be that the Jewish people, the Mesiras Nefesh, the self-sacrifice, that the Jewish people are able to actualize when necessary, when their faith in Hashem is tested, and they stand strong and be pride and remain in their Judaism and not deny their Judaism, comes from the essence of the Jewish soul. And that's especially true during the times of exile, which is not the case in a time, let's say in the times of Geula, like in the case of the First Temple period, where there was a Gilui Elokut, or like in the desert, where the Jewish people, wasn't required of them to serve Hashem with actual self-sacrifice. So even though they were on a higher level from one point of view, because they were constantly in a state of sensing holiness, on the other hand, it's only in the exile when a person is crushed by the trials and tribulations of the exile that we're able to approach the luminary. And that's what it says, katit, that the shemen, bring the shemen, that it should be katit la'maor, not katit la'or. You would think it should say the shemen should be crushed for illumination, but it says katit la'maor, it should be crushed for the luminary, because the actual crushing, the tribulations of exile, which crush the Jewish people to an extent, bring the Jewish people to a higher level that they are able to attach to the essence of their soul, which is part of the luminary itself. It's not just light, but it is part of the luminary. It's part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. So we ended the chapter by asking, since the Jewish people have this essence of their soul, and that's the essence of their soul, which is the thing that enables them to serve Hashem with Mesiras Nefesh, with actual self-sacrifice. So what is the relationship between Moshe Rabbeinu in teaching the Jewish people knowledge? How, if the faith of the Jewish people is actualized by the fact of the essence of who they are, so what is the relationship between the Moshe Rabbeinu in trying to internalize this faith within the Jewish people through knowledge? Because we know that knowledge is one of the revealed powers of the soul. It's not a knowledge is always something that gets internalized. If a person thinks about it and understands it, it gets internalized. Faith, on the other hand, is not always internalized. So what is this relationship? And that's what chapter 4 starts to say. And chapter 4 starts to say that at the time of Purim, the Jewish people, we briefly covered this a little bit in last week's chapter, the Jewish people actualized the acceptance of the Torah that they made it at Har Sinai, that they would serve Hashem, Nasa v'nishma, and we will do and we will understand. And this doing means even if it requires Mesiras Nefesh. But at that time, because it didn't actually require the Jewish people to serve Hashem with Mesiras Nefesh, it was only a profession of that faith. Like we say in Shema Yisrael, Hashem is one, and we will serve Him b'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol miyodecha. We will serve Him with all our soul. B'chol levavecha is with both our hearts, not libcha, levavecha, two vavs, two hearts. There's the animal soul and the godly soul. The godly soul is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hu chelek elokam imam mamash. The godly soul only wants to serve Hashem. That's its reason, and today that's who it is. The animal soul, the natural soul, sometimes called the nefesh hasichlis, the intellectual soul, is connected to the body. We are mainly, since we're not tzaddikim, like the Tanya says, tzaddik is someone who has transformed his animal soul into holiness. We're still struggling with our animal soul. We're trying to be Beinonim. We're trying to, in our thought, speech, and deed, always do the right thing, always think the right thing, always say the right thing. That's a challenge. But it doesn't mean that we're not confronted with thoughts that come not from holiness. Right? It could be in the middle of davening, a person all of a sudden is thinking about foreign thoughts, and then he had to try to push those thoughts away. Or he could be thinking about something and all of a sudden see something, and all of a sudden impure thoughts come in his mind. He has to push them away. That's because, it's not because we're evil people. It's just because we haven't reached the level of tzaddikim. Tzaddikim are able to transform their animal soul, that power within it is only for Kedusha, is used only for Kedusha. We have to train our animal soul, just like an animal can be trained, right? So too we can train ourselves. And we train ourselves, it used to be, I think it used to be, there was more of a crushing. People would crush themselves. They would actually, I'm not talking about sleeping on a bed of nails, right? But people were harsher on themselves than today. Okay, but the way one trains an animal, right? The way one trains himself, his animal soul, is he teaches the animal soul that you're also creation of Hashem. You also want to serve Hashem, and it's good for you to serve Hashem. It's a good thing. You will have benefit from it, because what's the animal soul after? Pleasure. The animal soul's after pleasure and self-benefit. It's looking out for number one. Okay, so that could get translated into a very coarse, narcissistic, vulgar, selfish type of a person.
Just describe the average youth in America today.
Okay, yeah. If the person doesn't work on himself, right, and train his animal soul, it's that's the type of person he could become. But when he starts to train his animal soul, he teaches his animal soul that it's good to serve Hashem. It's a good thing. It'll be good for you too, because you'll have olam haba. The animal soul is interested in himself, right? The neshama serves Hashem because it's just the right thing to do. It's just a part of who the neshama is. The animal soul has to be taught. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good to keep kosher. It's good to learn Torah. It's good to have a good organized type of a life. If you have an organized type of a life, then you're able to accomplish much, much more, and you'll get a lot more. And learning Torah is good, and keeping mitzvahs is good, and to seeing the good and the beauty in it, and to train oneself to look for that in himself and in the other people, of course. And so the animal soul is connected to the body, right? The body is physical. And the animal soul is connected to that physicality. And then the neshama comes in, right? Without the neshama coming in, there's no balance. The person's just pure selfishness, right? You could intellectually teach him there's right and wrong. Okay, and that's why the animal soul is sometimes called the intellectual soul. Because the animal soul, unlike an animal that doesn't have so much intellect, right? Animals, as opposed to human beings, their intellect is only a function of what they need. They don't have actual abilities to think abstractly about a concept and say, what is the right way that I should conduct myself in such and such a situation? Only people have that ability to take an idea and think about it abstractly, right? If it may not be the right thing for me to open a store in a street where there's another store already that sells the same wares, because I'll be impinging upon his parnasa. But if a person is hungry for money, and they, like an animal, are hungry, and they don't think about others, like a lion, a hungry lion, he never really thinks about the rights or sensitivities of the deer or the zebra. He's just hungry. So he just goes and eats the zebra. And that's okay for a lion, okay? But we're not animals, we're people. So we are able to teach our animal soul, even without a godly soul, right? Even without having a godly soul, the animal soul can be taught what's right and wrong. And the animal soul is made up of 10 powers of the soul. And the intellectual powers are on a much higher level than the emotional powers. But just like an animal, that the animal's intellect, we say animals do have intellect, but they don't have abstract thought. And their intellect is totally a function of what they need. And what they feel is also part of what they need. Right? When you see animals acting in friendly manners, that's their nature. It's not that they decided one day that it's not nice for me to be a mean animal. I'm going to, from today on, I'm going to start trying to be a nice animal. It's part of the nature that Hashem put in them. And that's their emotional world. They have emotions. Some animals are calm. Some animals are agitated. Some animals can easily become agitated. Even if they're usually calm, they can easily become agitated. And how they react, they process in their mind. They have intellect that they need in order to survive, right? Their motivation is to survive, to procreate, and to get their needs met. That's what they're all about. And a person can be like that too. Their intellect can be a function of their animalistic nature. But a person also can take their intellect and start thinking, what is the right way that I should conduct myself in my life? I'm a person, I'm not an animal. Doesn't require it to be a Jew to have a conversation like that. Even a non-Jew, right? You're a person. There's right and there's wrong. If you're a good person, you understand that there's right and there's wrong, and you're attracted to good, and you want to be good, and so therefore you have to have knowledge, and you have to develop your seichel. And once you develop your seichel, so Your seichel can now influence your emotions, and you can train your emotions. True, I might want this, but it's not the right thing to take it. I might want it. Maybe I can figure out another way I can get it, which doesn't involve taking it from someone else. So we have to train ourselves. So so you have the body, you have the animal soul, and then the godly soul comes in, and the godly soul is kind of like enclosed within the animal soul, and from within the inside tries to express itself and make the animal soul interested in holiness. At least first to not be to meet naged from things that are holy, and then to appreciate holiness and to desire holiness, until you can actually see people. This is Jewish people that have reached a level where they're not holy people, right? Even normal people would get angry, they don't get angry because they realize everything comes from Hashem. So if I get angry, it means that I'm thinking that what comes from Hashem is not really supposed to happen. Hashem makes everything happen. Everything's hashgacha pratis. Everything is the divine providence. Therefore, it happened, okay, it's not comfortable for me that it happened, but I'm not going to get angry. And they talk sensitive, they're sensitive to other people, and all their dealings are with honesty and with integrity. They don't say one thing and mean another thing. Their heart and their mouth are true, and a person can go, Torah can raise a person up to become a tzaddik. And even if he doesn't become a tzaddik according to the definition of the Tanya, where he still actually has an animal soul that tries to influence him, because until he's a tzaddik, he still has free choice between good and evil. He's just always choosing good. That's a Beinoni, right? According to the Tanya, a Beinoni, an intermediate person, and the whole Tanya was written. It's called Sefer Shel Beinoni. It's written for people that have challenges. And the challenges are not something that a person should become depressed or disappointed about. On the contrary, if a person is davening and all of a sudden in the middle of davening he gets foreign thoughts, so without the Tanya teaching us that you have an animal soul and you have a godly soul, and your godly soul is davening and getting close to Hashem, and your animal soul and your godly soul is expressing it through your words and through your body and through your animal soul. And your animal soul doesn't like that because there's a Yetzer Hara, there's the force of evil that wants to try to keep you down. So therefore he's shooting thoughts that have nothing to do with tefillah into your mind. Without that, a person could get depressed and think my davening is worthless. The Alter Rebbe comes along and says the opposite. It shows your davening is actually having an effect, and your animal soul is feeling threatened. So therefore, he's throwing thoughts into your mind to try to be mebalbel you, to try to confuse you from your davening, or learning, or your behavior, or whatever it is that you're doing.
But the Beinoni, as Yaakov pointed out, pointing at me, is always the borderline of never on the borderline of family.
No, there are times that
Yeah,
there are times.
friend of mine.
There are times like if the Beinoni is at the times of davening, at the times of Kriya Shema. So the Beinoni then, the godly soul is flowing through him with such an extent of power that the animal soul, the evil in the animal soul, again, the animal soul is not evil. It has within it good and evil. It's a mixture, right? We live in the world of good and evil. Adam HaRishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, Tov v'Ra, and good and evil are mixed together. So the animal soul has within it good, and it has within it evil. So this Beinoni, at the time of his davening, the evil within the animal soul, the Alter Rebbe says, is like put to sleep. It's like in a coma. But right after he finishes davening, he wakes up, and it starts hammering him again. with all kinds of evil thoughts. One time, one of the Hasidim of the Maggid of Mezrich, he came to him and he said, Rebbe, how can I get rid of these evil thoughts that are coming into my mind? So he said, there's a chassid that lives in such and such a town. Go to him and you'll learn how to do that from him. So he went to this town and he asked where this chassid lived, and he found out where this chassid lived. And he went to the house and he knocked on the door and nobody answered. But he heard there were people inside, so he started hitting on the door and nobody answered. And he started banging on the door and nobody answered. And it got dark and he went to sleep on the guy's porch. And in the morning, the guy came out and said hello. And he asked the guy, he said, how come you didn't open the door? You didn't hear me knocking? He said, I heard you knocking. He said, but the Baal HaBayis, the house, the homeowner, he decides who he's going to let in and who he's not going to let in. And once the chassid heard that, he understood why the Maggid of Mezrich sent him. Because we have the ability to push out. Even if the thoughts come in, we don't have the ability to stop the thoughts from coming in, right? Because they're the evil part of the animal soul, even in the Beinoni, is still in its full force. So it's still bringing evil thoughts into the person's mind. So the person doesn't have the ability to stop that from happening. But once he recognizes, once he becomes conscious of those thoughts, and a person has to be a balabayit on his thoughts. He has to be in charge of what he's thinking. And once he becomes conscious of what he's thinking, and he realizes that these are not thoughts that a Jew should be thinking, he has to push them out with both hands and get rid of them. The way to do that is just to do it. But if a person just learn something, because you can't think more than one thing at a time. If you're actually thinking deeply into something, you can't think about another thing. So if a person is troubled by certain thoughts, he doesn't want to be troubled by them. So he can just change the things he's thinking about. And that'll work also in psychology too. That's, of course, it has to do with kedusha. That's a way a person can get rid of impure thoughts. If they keep hounding him, he can just change what he's thinking about. But also in psychology, if a person has depressing thoughts, right, and he doesn't want to be depressed, he wants to be positive, so he can change his thoughts to think about positive things. And the emotions will follow the thoughts. And that's a human being. A human being is required that his intellect should rule his emotions. Naturally, the intellect rules the emotions. But
Excuse me again?
Naturally, the intellect rules the emotions. But interestingly, in the Alter Rebbe,
According to the message, no.
I know you sent me that. I didn't really. I don't agree with that. I didn't understand fully what
You don't agree with the message?
No, I didn't see that was in the Maggid of Mezrich so much.
Yes.
Okay. In the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says, when he talks about the godly soul, he says the Chabad, the emotions are called Toldot Chabad. The emotional feelings are the offspring of the thoughts. When a person's thinking about godliness, Torah, Kedusha, so it produces love and fear, it produces good emotions.
What is Kadmut HaMochim?
Yeah, I saw what you wrote me that. I didn't understand that. I don't know. We'll have to talk about it, but I'm not able to talk about it. This is what it says in Tanya, that when it talks about the godly soul, it says that the emotions are the product. They're the derivative of the thoughts. When it talks about the animal soul, though, he changes it around. And the Alter Rebbe says that the thoughts are according to the emotions. In other words, the emotions in the animal soul have more strength unless they're tamed. They have to be tamed. And if they're not tamed, you can see what kind of evil people can exist in the world. Evil people, and the evil people.
Mesiras Nefesh and Isurim.
What?
Is there a difference between Mesiras Nefesh and Isurim?
Yisurim?
The real point is there are two.
broken here.
What page is that? I'm sorry, there's only one page to it.
361. Well, we didn't delve in it.
We didn't even get to that.
Well, we did.
What does it say? What's it say? What is it?
In particular, the last one.
What's your question?
Mesirat Nefesh and Yisurim.
Yisurim?
No,
Yisurim, you mean?
but is there a difference?
You mean Yisurim are tribulations?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
What's here? There is a difference.
Sure. A person can suffer with Yisurim lo aleinu. But it doesn't necessarily mean that.
But it can
that
be
it-
Mesirat
that-
Nefesh.
What?
But it can be Mesirat Nefesh. Mesirat Nefesh without Yisurim is not Mesirat Nefesh. In order to have Mesirat Nefesh, do you have to have Yisurim?
No, you don't need Yisurim. You don't need
But it
suffering.
But it helps.
You don't need suffering to have Mesiras Nefesh. In the Maamar right now, we'll see later that you don't need suffering to have Mesiras Nefesh. There's a higher level of Mesiras Nefesh that doesn't require suffering. But in general, it's only the actual self-sacrifice, giving up one's life, right, is only required when there's some evildoer that's trying to force the Jew to give up his religion. And that's Yisurim, that's tribulations and trials. But there's another type of Mesiras Nefesh that there's Mesiras Nefesh in actuality where a person has to give up their life, but then there's Mesiras Nefesh where a person is actually putting everything else in his life to the side and just being focused on what Hashem wants him to do and serving Hashem with Mesiras Nefesh. That does not require Yisurim. That does not require pain and suffering. So at the time of the Megillah, at the time of Achashverosh, so the Jewish people actualized the Mesiras Nefesh that Moshe Rabbeinu, that they accepted at Har Sinai.
This is important, what we are speaking, because everything is related to faith.
Faith?
Yes. What it says here. The faith of the people enabling to be internalized because he reveals the essence of the soul, of the soul, which every Jew possesses.
Right.
So we should speak about this faith. Because
Yes. So on the one hand, the Jewish people at the time of the giving of the Torah are a much higher level. Yet it was only when the Jewish people were in exile, in the time of Achashverosh, the temple was destroyed. The second temple had not yet been built. The first temple was destroyed, and the Jewish people were sent into exile into Babylon. And then the Babylonian king was assassinated, and Achashverosh became the king, the Persian king, who ruled over the entire world, including the Jewish people, including Eretz Yisrael. And we were his subjects. And then there was a evil minister by the name of Haman, who came from Amalek. We know the story. He wanted to destroy the entire Jewish people. And Mordechai, who was the leader of the generation, in that generation, he was the Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the extension of Moshe in that generation. So he taught the Jews. He influenced the Jews. He brought out within the Jews their ability to remain proud Jews and not give up their religion, yet to be willing to sacrifice themselves if that was required, but still to remain proud Jews. And that was what Mordechai inspired this self-sacrifice. There was a decree, yeah. that all the Jews were going to be exterminated. Lo aleinu. Shelo yeh. And in this regard, their actual expression of self-sacrifice and the observance of Torah and the mitzvahs elevated them to a level that was higher than they experienced at the giving of the Torah.
Was it fear or was it something else?
It was from being, it was the very fact that they were in exile and there was a decree and there was Mordechai, and on the one hand, the essence, the essence of the Jewish soul is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, the essence of the Jewish soul neither desires nor can it separate itself from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's number one. And also Moshe Rabbeinu, the Moshe Rabbeinu in that generation, Mordechai, through knowledge, also internalized the faith through knowledge that the Jewish people naturally had. There was a combination. This is the relationship.
Excuse me if I insist.
Yes.
והתייצבו על תחתית ההר. They weren't afraid.
Right, that's one explanation of the Midrash, correct. Another, the Alter Rebbe explains the Midrash in that when it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu raised a mountain over them, that he, in a way, took away their free choice because they were so enraptured with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the great miracle that he did for them when he took us out of Egypt and split the sea. That they just responded to that love by saying, "Of course, yes, we'll accept."
And you say love, I say fear.
Okay. Either way, it wasn't something that they did out of their own full free choice, and that happened at the time of Purim.
Why am I underlying these aspects?
Why you what?
I am underlying these aspects.
I don't know.
I'm telling you, because this mainly refers not to regular people, special people. People who have a really deep, deep faith and deep, deep trust. Regular people like me and him and me.
And me.
Who?
All of us. We're all regular people.
Not me.
We are different.
No, not me.
We are not at this level. So
Which level is it talking about?
the love you were speaking.
Okay.
Trust. And
Nevertheless, throughout the generations, even the simplest Jews, even Jews that in their regular
4 minutes.
in their regular life, you wouldn't think that they were very observant or very cared much about their Judaism. When it came to a test
Yes.
and the cross was
Yes.
given to them and said, bow down to the cross or you'll be killed, they chose death.
Rambam had a problem, you know.
Ramban?
Rambam.
The Rambam.
Maimonides.
Yeah, he had a problem.
Well, he was forced to.
Well, I'm not so knowledgeable about what you're talking about, but I know that the Rambam lived under the
Yes.
Islam,
Yes. Yes.
and
Absolutely.
the
yes.
Rambam holds that Christianity is idol worship, but that Islam is not idol
He
worship.
was obliged to convert. And,
I don't believe that the Rambam converted.
no, but there was a problem with the Rambam. I am not saying exactly what because I don't remember. I don't want to say something wrong. But he had a big problem and he excused people who in front of those who obliged them to convert, they would convert. He excused them.
Okay. I'm not, again, I'm not familiar with this. I know that,
No, what
I
I'm
think
saying
what
is-
I did hear is that there was a decree that if everybody would not bow down
Yeah.
in the mosque, they would be murdered. And the Rambam allowed bowing down in the mosque, but he told the Jewish people, bow down and pray to Hashem.
Okay. Maybe yes, maybe I don't know exactly. Maybe it's maybe. I don't
Because the
really-
Rambam held that the Islam was not idol worship.
Yeah.
But to
But
say that to profess that what the Muslims profess, right? Where they say that Muhammad is the true prophet. The Rambam said that he could say that too, or people that did say that, he found an excuse because their life was in danger. Okay, but we find an excuse for people's life was in danger in all kinds of situations. You don't need to bring the Rambam for that. But the Rambam allowed them to say that? Certainly not.
I just don't know. I'm not saying yes or no because I don't know.
Okay.
But what remains is we are not on this level. This pertains to people who are different from us.
What pertains? The Mesiras Nefesh, the ability to have Mesiras Nefesh?
You have to think only whatever you do in your life is directed there. It's not for regular people.
I don't agree. Maybe it's a challenge. It's a lifelong challenge.
For sure it's a challenge, but
It's a challenge.
I would say that 99.7% of people are on the other side of the challenge.
I don't know about the statistical number. I would say it's much, much less.
Succeeded or
Failing.
You know, I'll
Not
tell
even-
you.
Not even trying.
that's what I'm asking, trying or not?
I'll tell you a story. In the 60s, the Rebbe used to have groups of students would come to the Rebbe. So a group of non-observant students came to the Rebbe, and Jewish students. And one of the students asked the Rebbe, "Are we okay? Are we okay?" So think about it. If you tell the Jewish students, of course you're okay. You're Jews, you're Hashem's children. HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you, as you are. So what do we have to keep Torah and mitzvahs for? We're fine just the way we are. And if you tell them, no, you're not okay, you have to learn Torah and serve mitzvahs, then you're telling them, you're insulting them. Once upon a time, you could get a child, you could motivate a child with a potch. These days, doesn't work. You have to motivate the child with kindness and drawing him close. So the Rebbe was, from our point of view, the Rebbe had a little bit of a dilemma. So what the Rebbe answered him? Brilliant answer. The Rebbe said, who's on a higher level? There's a mountain of 613 steps, a ladder. The Rebbe said, it says about Yaakov, that Yaakov had a dream about a ladder, that its head, its top, reached the heaven, and its bottom reached the earth. And it had 613 rungs. If it had 613 rungs, and someone is on the 600th rung, and another person's on the 10th rung, who's on a higher level? So they answered, the one on the 600th rung. So the Rebbe said, no. It depends what rung the person was on yesterday. If he's going up or he's going down. What's important is the direction. Not how much you're doing, but what direction you're going. So Yaakov laughs. So we're all, it doesn't matter where we are on the ladder. But it is important that we all realize that the challenges that we have in our lives, Hashem gave us specifically because He knows we can overcome them. And we have to struggle to overcome them and to act the right way, and to think the right way, and to speak the right way. And then we're serving Hashem with Mesiras Nefesh. You wanted to ask something for a while.
When you start,
Well, you did the version of the story I heard about how many mitzvahs you're doing now, come back to the years.
Oh, you heard that story?
But what you're saying, what he's saying is interesting, though. And you can apply this to our next class. Where Rabbi Weinberg teaches us about how Shloshim Zohar praying, and it's not being applied. So do you discover, and people say, wow, that's a great class, he's on a whole other level. I'm like, well, what's the point if he's on a whole other level? You have to aspire to be on that level, or why go to the class?
I make an example of what you are saying. In contrast, what the law is saying. When there is a Jew, take Hillel and Shammai. You don't start from the top. When someone wants to get to be a ger, at the beginning, you don't tell him, pray as he said, or 600 serve. Start with two, with three. Start with Shabbos, start with kosher, start with feeling. Go step by step. What is a step by step in order of Tanya? The Tanya, according to my understanding, the low understanding, it starts already from the Benoni, which is already far beyond us.
Okay, so there's a Rebbe, and there's a Mashpia. And then there's all kinds of, there's a sun, the moon, and the stars, right? It says that Hashem took Avram out, and he said, your children, your descendants will be compared to the stars, right? So the sun, right, our Rebbe, is a very powerful, powerful luminary, right? That not everyone can get to that, can have that direct influence from the Rebbe, right? Then there's the moon. The moon is the mashpim. What's the moon? The moon is sunlight. When you look at the moon, you see the light, it's sunlight. But the moon takes the sunlight and changes it to a way where it's on a lower level. And everyone needs to have a mashpia. Like it says in Pirkei Avos, Aseh Lecha Rav. Everyone needs to have a rabbi, a rav, someone that they can talk to, someone that they can use as a sounding board, someone that can tell them, give them advice, tell them, hey, stay away from that. It's not good for you. And then there's stars, right? You will go on a ship at night. During the day, you can see where it's east and west by the way the sun is rising and setting.
Yeah, I'm not speaking about this.
One second. But by how do you navigate at night? By the stars, right? The stars are, each and every person has certain qualities, certain good qualities like stars that can light up our way. And every Jewish people has those qualities. And everyone's on their own private journey, their own individual journey. Everyone's got their own challenges based on their own makeup, their own personality, their abilities. Not everyone has the same abilities. Their environment, the way they were raised, right? This is not about accounting. This is not about figuring out who's good and who's bad. This is about serving a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And within the Jewish soul is a power to serve a Kodesh Baruch Hu with total self-sacrifice. And that can be influenced and brought to the fore by Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what we're talking about, that relation. Did I answer your question? What's your question? Why is the Alter Rebbe talking?
Whom is he talking to?
The entire Jewish people. In other words, you're saying that the Maamar is...
Not the Maamar, I speak in general, not specifically on this Maamar. Not specifically.
The subject matter is too lofty? Is that what you're saying? Doesn't apply?
If you want to mashpia, but I'm Aretz. They don't get it because it's too far from them.
Okay, it's too lofty. So you feel it's lofty, too far.
Not necessarily too lofty, but it's far.
Okay.
Well,
So you find that...
Well, to sure, how many say once they read the Tanya and started?
Excuse me?
Many Baal Teshuvah that I've spoken to have cited the Tanya as the initial. Once they read the Tanya, they said, "Oh, maybe I can do this." But I don't have like.
Do you believe that?
No, I'm just telling what they said.
Okay. All of these concepts relate to us. However much you're able to have it relate to you, the better.
Yeah. What I say, I feel it is missing the in-between from 0
Okay, so chapter 5 goes into the in-between a little bit. There's a well-known concept
These
that
weren't written down initially, correct? The Maamars.
they were spoken.
Well,
Yeah, they were spoken. The Jewish people are called, they believe in Hashem be'emunah pshuta. It's a well-known concept that the Jewish people believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu with simple faith. They don't require any proof for that faith. And this is a result of two factors. One is that it says in the Gemara, Mazle Chazi, in the Gemara and Megillah, that the mazel of a Jew perceives. The mazel of a Jew is the part of his soul that's not invested in the body. There are 5 parts to the soul. The lower part, the higher parts don't get invested in the body. The lower parts of the soul are invested in the body. But even though those higher parts of the soul are not invested in the body, they're still connected to the body. And they still can influence, they're still connected to the soul that's invested in the body. And they still can influence the soul that's connected in the body. So since the neshama above sees godliness and is aware that the truth of all existence is a Kadosh Baruch Hu,
What if not?
the soul above is aware. So therefore, the soul has the ability to influence the soul down here that's in the body. And that's why, from time to time, Jewish people who have very little to do with Torah and mitzvahs, all of a sudden get a hisorut. And that's why...
What about the real Rishon? They don't feel anything. They don't believe. They don't have anything. On the contrary, they're against.
we have to try to help them. Doesn't mean that they don't have a soul. Doesn't mean that their soul above doesn't see. It just means that there is a blockage. There's a blockage. Why there's a blockage? How to get rid of the blockage? How to get rid of the blockage? We know.
This is the point.
We have to reach out to them with ways of pleasantness and peace, and with genuine concern over them, and maybe we'll be successful, maybe not. It's not when a person speaks to the heart, speaks from the heart, it goes to the heart. Okay, but we're not. Well, let's leave off all the challenges that we have to face, and let's see where we're not.
We say every day,
Right? True.
okay.
Okay, so you're right. But if you have the ability to influence a person that he shouldn't be a Malshin anymore, and he shouldn't be a Russia anymore, influence him.
Yes, but he doesn't.
You don't know what those words, that act of kindness, how it will be absorbed and what effect it will have. We don't know that. And sometimes there are many stories that people all of a sudden they burst into their Judaism and embrace their Judaism years later because of something that happened years before.
I know at least 3 persons in Italy, very famous ones. Jews. Not even an anti-Semite is like them. I know 3 of them.
Well, what's the point? There's a blockage by that. There's a blockage. Okay, but most people, the vast majority, except for some exceptions, from once you see that on Yom Kippur, right? The Jews, the streets are relatively empty. Keren Yesod is a major street this Yom Kippur.
Yes.
Kids were playing on Keren Yesod. Cars weren't driving. What happened? All of a sudden, the Jewish people that previously weren't concerned so much about observing Torah mitzvahs became very concerned. No,
in the center.
there was a hisarus. There was an awakening. Their soul above was able to influence their soul below, and the soul below felt an elevation. Yes, Yom Kippur is here. It's an elevated day. It's a holy day. That's called when the mazel perceives. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos which says that every day a voice goes out of Horeb, out of Har Sinai, and says, "Woe to the people that embarrass the Torah by not studying it." Right? Woe to the people. So many Mefarshim, many commentaries ask, who hears it? What does it help if nobody hears it? So the answer they give is, the soul above hears it. There's a spiritual effect above, and that spiritual effect can trickle down and affect the soul below. So that's one reason that the Jewish people here in this world don't need proofs for their faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because their soul above sees the truth, and there's not a blockage. And there's not a blockage. So therefore, they believe, yes, they believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And people that don't believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's a certain blockage. Whether the blockage is intellectual or emotional, or came about through eating the wrong foods. And this perception transcends the power of thought. It's above the power of actual thinking and knowledge. And it affects the soul that's enclosed within the body, imbuing it with a spirited faith in Hashem. And then there's another reason why the Jewish people down here below believe in Hashem with simple faith. And that's because faith is rooted in the essence of the soul. And the essence of the soul is above all levels. And that level where the soul above perceives, that's a level. But the essence of the soul is a part of Hashem himself. And that connection that the soul shares with Hashem himself doesn't depend on any external factors, not even the quality of seeing that transcends this world.
It's even higher than Moichin.
Right? That's correct.
Then we agree now.
Yes.
Kumbaya.
Which is not exactly kosher.
But I think I should work on me and not worry about getting a lot of. I should work on me and not worry about money or body or getting a lot of.
No, okay, but
So
okay.
the Rebbe answers the question we asked: what is the relationship between Moshe Rabbeinu, and why do we need Moshe Rabbeinu to nurture this faith, if this faith is a possession that every Jew has as a virtue of him having a soul? So the Rebbe answers and says, Moshe's endeavor to nurture and sustain the faith of the people, enabling that faith to be internalized, because we said that faith is something that could remain encompassing. It could be something that someone professes with his mouth, but doesn't actually internalize, and that it pervades his entire being. That's possible. The fact Moshe is able to internalize the faith through teaching knowledge because he reveals the essence of the soul which every Jew possesses. And that is the luminary. That is the luminary that's within each and every Jew. And the fundamental revelation of the luminary within the soul of the Jew, the essence of the soul, is through Mesiras Nefesh, like you read, which is expressed primarily in the time of exile. But Moshe nurtures this faith through knowledge, and the knowledge internalizes it in the revealed powers of the Jew, so that the Jew is able to serve Hashem with Mesiras Nefesh all the time, and not just in a time when he is faced with a test of his faith.
So he asked, who is the audience for this? And you said all Jews. But who was the audience at the actual time he said it?
Hasidim.
The Hasidim. The Hasidim. But
As a matter of fact, he used to say, it should be more important to listen than to read.
Who said
in the introduction of the Tanya,
that it's more important to what?
to listen to him than to read him. Because everybody is going to acquire what he's personally needing, and everybody needs something else. This is written in the introduction of the
Very
Tanya.
interesting. Okay. Pleasure as always. Thank you. We'll see you next week, Ms. Rakashem.
Look at this.